There's people sharing personal stories and also passing on kind of lessons learned from what they've experienced. So, yeah, this is blocked. So I thought I'd just take you on a kind of wild meander through what I've done in my life and try to pass on some of the stuff I've learned on the way. So my background, at the moment I'm a UX designer, which is the latest kind of iteration of interaction design, information architect. But I've come from, I was an archaeology student, I've been a professional chef, and I think I've got quite a few more skills that I'm not going to talk about today. Can someone help me with this? Wait a sec, here we go. Brilliant. Let's just go to the beginning. Okay. So yeah, I started off when I was in my 20s. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the beginning. And a lot of people know when they're young what they want to do in life. My approach was almost random. I filled in a form, and it was a multiple choice, and it said I should be a merchant banker, stockbroker, or archaeologist. So I chose the last, and I dove into the topic, and they teach you how to do field drawings. I used these kinds of tools to do surveying, and that's also where I got to learn about computation. I was dragging radars across the ground, trying to look under the ground to see what's going on underneath. And this is some of the kind of work that you do, which in the end led me to kind of skip the whole subject. It's lots of arranging of pieces from the past into small bags. And so the Indiana Jones, the romantic side of archaeology, it's a very academic, very scientific field. But I was fortunate enough this is the site called Ashkelon. It's a 5,000-year-old city, 20 on top of each other, based in Israel at the moment. And while I was there, on the walls of the city, we found this golden calf, which is the god Baal. When Moses went up the mountain, got the Ten Commandments, came down, and as you might have seen in a Hollywood movie, everyone was celebrating, partying, drinking, and Moses was furious and wanted to stop the party, but they were worshiping this god. So that was really fun to be kind of luckily in the right place at the right time. Personally, I was digging one day when I found this 4,000-year-old Canaanite woman. There were some rabbis walking around, and we had to convince them that this people did not need to be circumcised, and we didn't need to bury them in a specific way, rebury them. So after that, I went to Burke because I needed to make some money to go digging again. So I raised the money for a flight and headed off to Central America, where I was kind of studying to be a Mayanist. So I was learning epigraphy, ancient codes, how to read Mayan scripts. And one of the greatest experiences there was some of the field rangers one day said, we found a new site, because we were digging on one site where we were going into the jungle every day, surveying in the middle of the jungle. And I think it took us 8 hours, went out off on a boat, across rivers, and suddenly ended up, and lo and behold, covered in trees, there was all these ranges of, obviously, pyramids covered in trees, an unfound site, heavily looted. So I left the field. In the end, archaeology was a wonderful, I guess the lesson learned is it's okay if you don't know what you want to do, and just try, it kind of was an inspiring experience in showing weird places you can end up, even if you don't quite know where you're going. In the end, I decided to leave this field, and randomly again, I ended up starting a business as a baker. So it was quite an odd transition. I was making chocolate brownies called James Brownies. I sold to all the delicatessens in the city. And this was my chocolate chip, double chocolate chip brownie tray. But the unfortunate thing about, if you're a really curious person, is that doing one product is not enough. You need diversity. So I quit the business and self-taught myself to be a chef. And it was really grueling. But the amazing thing about learning cooking in a kitchen is you teach yourself like multi-sensory experience design, which was very helpful later when I went into the design field, digital design, hardware, software. And I also was fortunate in where I ended up, but at the beginning, a lot of my life was like this, where I was getting screamed at, shouted at, slicing my fingers up, which is kind of the normal, what would happen as you have to perform to a deadline. At 7 o'clock, there's 70 people that need feeding. Another weird thing, that's another intense and kind of elevating situation to be in if you work in digital design. These projects can take long periods of time. You do have deadlines, but the sense of urgency is often lost. Being in a kitchen is all about kind of poetics of movement. Timing is just on a different level. And it ended up with me working in a very weird restaurant in Amsterdam called the Supper Club, which at the moment it's become a chain and it's really big, but it used to be a kind of situationist, artist, much more experiential and experimental place. I know that, this is, Guy Debord uses way overwinded words and complicated way of saying it, but we had carpenters at our disposal, we had audiovisual people, we had a whole wardrobe like a theater downstairs with clothing. And so cooking at night, we would plan often experiences where it could be something situational where it just comes out of nothing, or we would actually plan a kind of theatrical moments would happen throughout the night. And we used all these different components to build an experience from it. So that was something kind of unique in restaurant culture in a way that was fantastic. And being in that situation taught me the power of how people can create something out of nothing in a very small time. Here are various dishes, plates with, someone said, I've got 14,000 books. Do you want them? So we brought all the books into the restaurant and we just had them everywhere. They're on plates, putting this is salad on a book, on a plate. Food. So at the same time I was started producing electronic music, which also was very helpful later in digital design, just understanding. So I guess multi-sensory, if you teach yourself how to cook, how to do many different things, then that really helps you become a better designer. And it's pleasurable at the same time. So this was the beginning of my digital design time. I started a web design company. I stupidly turned down a stagiaire to El Bulli, the biggest regret of my life, which is a 3-star Michelin restaurant just closed down in Spain. So this led to another project where I kind of discovered my, I would say, my moral development was triggered. There's different models of, like, people don't really teach you life skills when you're growing up. You pick it up from friends, from family, from people around. But I guess over time I've tried to teach myself how to grow on many different levels. So not only as a a father or a mother, but as a friend, but also as a citizen, politically, morally, creatively. I try to set myself challenges each year. And so along the way, I've kind of taken on projects that have led in these different directions. So this was a project which happened because I didn't really have, I never had voted, and I didn't really have a sense of my political self, and I felt very alienated, which many people do. So I started this project. I wanted to hack some tax forms. I got some tax forms, I scanned them in, and I was just really pissed off that I didn't have any kind of interface with the government. So I just said, okay, well, imagine I can take a bit of my tax money and I can then spend it. I can elect where the money goes, and then the government's forced to report where did the money go back to me. So that was really fun. And that led to me organizing an event, which was basically the beginning of the Dutch open data movement. So at the event, we met people from the Dutch government who then hired me and Ton Zylstra to create a guide of how to open up government data and to also build some prototypes. The open data movement globally is just, it's very big now, but essentially it's about making government transparent and improving government services. The big lesson from this was it's incredibly, amazingly easy to start something. And if you're into doing it, it's never been easier than before. By just having a conversation with people, by doing an event such as this, it's brilliant how, with the technology that you have today, you can take a conversation, plan something, invite people around, and it can suddenly become a global movement within a very short time. And I'll show you more examples of this, because I started like 5 organizations, and most of them still going. This was the kind of information design opened and gone around the world, which was a guide to how do you open government data. And we did some prototypes where this was based on the air particulates information sensed around the country, and we had it tweeting to you when it's dangerous for you to go outside the next day. I don't know if necessarily that's the right way to make people aware of something as ephemeral as pollution. I think Bruce Sterling said it best when he said that it should kind of rain red on you. So this is another example of a project I started, which is really in another conversation. How does all this social stuff back in 2005, all this Flickr and all the services before what we currently have, how do we take that into the physical world? So again, let's build something, turns into an open source project, and we basically built a whole bunch of different little projects. One of the key ones was, again, people talking and building stuff together. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but we built a lot of different prototypes, which led to another project, which was if Roomware was just about small space, Verb is studying kind of urban computation and urbanism and how do technologies affect these larger systems. So you can see we're kind of quite a long way from archaeology by now. And recently, I've been working, I started a group of quantified self in Amsterdam. So how many of you, do you all know quantified self? Not at all? Some of you do, some of you don't. So quantified self is another, something similar to Creative Mornings in that it's spread globally. There's 40 groups in different countries. Essentially, it started as a bunch of geeks who were noticing people measuring themselves in really, really odd ways. So for instance, this guy was measuring his coffee intake and in relation to his headaches, and noticing when should I stop caffeinating myself, and how should I regulate that. So people are doing all these scientific experiments. So when you go to quantified self groups, basically it's like, what did you did? How did you do it? What did you learn? So it's kind of this movement of self-experimentation on and tracking various parts of your behavior. So it could be health, mood, fitness. There's various health communities, fitness communities that are associated with it, and a lot of hackers who are just kind of trying to change their behavior. So this is Gary Wolf, one of the founders with Kevin Kelly. I don't know why I have that slide in there. So this led to some personal experiments. I decided to go to the fringe because I found that more interesting, of like, okay, this whole collision of humans and computation is like, it's a really big deal. I mean, it's like totally impacting all our lives. So what happens when you take it to the weird extremes? And one of the experiments I did was it was early in my relationship with my girlfriend. I wish she was here because we really should have her perspective in the story, me just telling it on my own. And yeah, it was difficult, measuring the relationship. It was a bit, sensitive. We were kind of at the second stage of a relationship, the end of the romance period. Kind of, it gets real here. And there were things we started noticing with each other. We just really bugged the shit out of each other. And we had this kind of ritual where we go and eat dim sum frequently, and we would draw on the tables. I don't know if you've had dim sum in some restaurants. They have a paper tablecloth, and you can actually draw on it. So we were already kind of playing around, just sketching. And we started to say, okay, let's just measure the behaviors that each of us do and give it allocate it a score, a minus or a plus score. So she would be riding the bike and she would kick a can, an empty can, and drive me nuts. And I'd be like, minus 20. She's like, but I like that. And then a few weeks later, she actually stopped it. And then when I gave this talk somewhere else, the women in the group said, you bastard. She has the right to feel fun. Enjoy that. When I had the remote control in my hand, minus 15. So this is a kind of semi-list of Euroshopper wine gums. I got minus 5 for that. Kissing drunk on the bike, I was like, minus 15, she gave me plus. And then this kicking the can, minus 25. Holding the remote control, I got minus 20. Switching TV channels, minus 20. And so on and so forth. So basically, this is a weird experiment in how you can share your perception, allocate a kind of arbitrary score. There's no winning condition. It's not like a game that who wins. Conditions with this, I think you both need to be open and willing to be playful. If you have a serious type A person, they might not want to do this in the relationship. But it's possible. So that was just, one of these quantified, something that came out of my interest in what happens when we think about these things. Another one was measuring, Bass is my hard drive, is a good friend of mine. I have a really poor memory, and so he remembers everything crystal clear from the past. And so I started recording audio conversations with him and kind of seeing how that affected me or how we felt about it. And that led to kind of getting into this interesting notion of, in software development, there's this idea where you can have different versions of yourself, different versions of software. Well, apply that to the human. So that was another kind of experiment. And what happens if you have different versions of yourself or branches? How would that look like? What would that look like? And finally, I guess last year the Arab Spring happened, and I don't know how, but I got involved with a group of friends. We decided we wanted to do something, And this is actually the internet being turned off. So apart from what was going on the ground, communications were turned off, and as we all are most people are like, don't fuck with our internet. You can't fuck with that, okay? It's holy. So we had Senator Lieberman coming in saying, we want to turn off your internet in America too. And then the United Nations came in and said, okay, we actually think it's a part of free speech that people have. They can connect to the internet. It's now a law. So with a bunch of people, we got together and we decided to work on kind of this monitoring part of how you can find out when governments and companies decide to interfere with the network. So we're building this quite ambitious project right now, which is measuring, kind of showing a cyber geography of, we're measuring the whole internet. We're taking huge data sets and seeing where disconnections are happening globally and comparing different kinds of data, legal data, network data. There's like a whole bunch of different layers, and then this is a kind of early warning system for governments and activists on the ground. So we're partnering with all sorts of journalistic sites. Again, another project where you have an idea, you throw it out there, and how do you get help? In this case, it was simply an email which got posted on someone else's group, and somehow broadcasting it to a few people who put it on, sent a mail to their friends. We recruited the most amazing people who, it was kind of like their burning life desire to be part of the project. So that's actually one of the amazing things, that when you start these projects, that they can sometimes attract, they're like strange attractors. They bring in people whose almost life mission, even more than my own, who randomly started this thing in the beginning. You attract these people who often go on to even lead the whole project. So yeah, this just reminded me of being a boy and thinking there's this movie, what do you call it? War Games. And so it's just interesting to, I was just playing around with video and presentations. I haven't done it before. But so forgive me for video. But just this notion that now with the technology we have, the transparency of like the Pentagon war room is just really bizarre. And that's kind of what I'm seeing with these new tools, is that we start to, like with WikiLeaks and all of these, kind of this trend towards transparency and us being able to know more information to make decisions about the world we live in. It reminded me somewhat of War Games. So thank you very much for listening. And I hopefully, the big lessons that I can pass on are, it's easy to start something, easy to attract people to it. So just go and do it if that's in your nature. And I think half of people are introverts, so that's okay, you don't have to. And the other lessons are basically, all the normal things. Read widely. I told myself of, have you heard of the canon? Or like there's a certain, in medieval times, you were supposed to study the canon, and it's kind of like the basics. I think that everyone should know, history from 0 BC or on human history, like know what's happened in the past to understand the present, and read widely. But again, curiosity is almost impossible to teach. Maybe you can teach it. I haven't seen evidence of that. So the fact that you guys are you're all here is probably you're curious people. So it's probably to that person sitting down, looking at YouTube in their boxer shorts. It's to you, like, you can actually get up and do something. So thank you.
You mentioned that it's really easy to start off projects. What's the difficult part of it?
I guess, Yeah, I guess whether it gets traction is hard. Like, how do you decide whether to continue it? Because I've had like open source software projects that kind of just faded into, you know, the sunset. I guess there's different transitions. Like, it's easy to get started, but to maintain can be harder. And like, if an open source software project is different from like a group that meets up, like for instance, this event or quantified self. So there's nothing really that complicated. I don't know what the difficult part is. It doesn't take too much time. I think maybe getting funded for some subject matters is difficult, but for you know, if you can connect it with good sponsors, then that's great. It depends on the people involved. Of course, you are the people involved, so if you have really people who have very good skills to kind of, you'll overlap each other, but you have different skill sets, and that really is useful. I don't know if that's been good enough answer. Or yeah, there's no wrong answer. Yeah.
I was wondering, what did you hope to achieve with quantified self?
It's just purely personal interest in like computation and the self, like how that collides, and you know, feeling like I'm part of the last generation of humans in the traditional sense. It seems like an interesting, yeah, and especially, so I guess it's kind of leveraging my interest, my curiosity. So I mean, I'm now, you know, for instance, from designing products like that, like I've been designing sleep products recently, but seeing the latest in actuators, sensors, hardware is really interesting, and how those tools are put together has been, so that's kind of professionally, but philosophically, yeah, it's been really great to help. It kind of speeds up your learning.
Your first slide was a software branch structure.
Yeah.
And you said that you can also apply that to your life. How do you sort of bring those tags and branches? How do you develop in that way?
I was kind of considering doing that for this talk, but it was getting too complicated. In the end, I kind of gave up. I kind of feel like the imposition of like a software or a rational methodology on the person kind of is horrendous. But it does possibly bring insight. So I think we could talk together about it. How would you, like, what are turning points in your life could be possible branches or, you know, activities that you do, but changes in how do you track your beliefs? Like, how did your belief change about the world, about relationships? You had a massive fight with your relationship partner, which made you actually learn something and see things in a totally different light. So, you know, there's many places you can look at. And so I guess some kind of weird diary-like, branch-like thing, but I'd love to, you know, explore it more.
So you say, this goes back to what you were saying, that it's easy to start a project. So I'm curious, what are you doing? How are you starting projects?
How am I starting them? I just have a conversation with you, for instance, and you just say, I'm really interested in this. Oh, and then we kind of like, well, what if, and how about that? Okay, well, okay, so then is that answering what yeah.
You know, is it just about networking with different people who become interested in your idea and then getting them together?
I think yeah, it's a bit of that. I think often most of the people I've been with have been friends already. So I think that's a big part of it. Or else they're kind of close friends with friends of mine. So it's often not completely new people, although Quantified Self, we tweeted it and someone became one of the co-founders. So that was, and then we met and it was just a perfect kind of synchronicity. But yeah, and then you just say, well, I've got a space, let's just bring some people together. And then you have like the bar camp the open spaces methodology, which is, you can curate the event however you like. Like, you can basically just say, do you know the open spaces methodology or Barcamp? Okay, so basically, instead of people presenting to an audience, it's more horizontal. What you're interested in, you put on a sticker and you put it on the wall, and you have like time, so 10 o'clock, 11, 12, 1, 2. You say, I want to talk about this subject, and at 10 o'clock. People follow their feet. That's the rule. Follow your feet and leave if you're not interested. So the whole discussion can be organized in a way where it's just based on you follow your curiosity, and then instead of this presenter audience kind of situation.
So it seems as about getting people who are interested in a certain idea or curious about that idea. But then you're devoting extra time out of whatever else you're doing in your day. Does that become are you?
I haven't made a lot of money as compared to people working like full time all the time. But then I've also, as Boris was saying earlier, you don't often need a lot of money. So that was enabling me to do other stuff that I found that was more interesting to me. But yeah, it is a sacrifice if you want to have kind of the stable situation that a lot of people would like to predict how the bills are paid and everything. But it's not necessary. You can freelance or have other work for periods of time to make it possible to do that.
Right, so there's a balance between this is my financial self.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I freelance and do a lot of design work, and I work on longer projects, so I kind of step into the design world and kind of, full advertising. I've done big work for big brands and worked on just very commercial projects. And then I step out and I do this, and often I just get things started and other people are jumping in. So like people with, for instance, in the last project, it's like super technical, like way down the stack geeks with like, nerding out on command line and yeah, like massive cloud computational analysis, predictive modeling stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I make it possible. I help bring the people together, and I kind of often step back, and then obviously I don't have to put as much time in.
So is the time spent where you're doing it parallel with work that's bringing?
Yeah, often, because you can just have Skype channel open, and I just help steer people in the right direction. So it's like a bit of either project management, leading, communications, and then I just jump in to do some experience design or kind of recruiting. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
You said that you can. You said you can't teach curiosity, right? Like
I don't know.
Curiosity is impossible to teach.
I don't know if it's impossible, but I haven't. Yeah, I don't know. I think it must. Someone will prove me wrong probably and say, yeah, of course it is. You know.
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I agree that you can teach curiosity. Either you're curious or not. But like, how can you channel your curiosity? Because, for example, archaeology, like if you're an archaeologist, you're curious, but then you have to know where to go to look for things. So, like, for example, personally, like I'm curious, but sometimes I don't know where to channel my energy and my curiosity. So how do you, for your experience, how do you...
It just depends on it depends on your personality. I mean, you might just enjoy reading a book at home or having a talk with a friend, but it just depends on the expectations you set for yourself with that. Or like for me, it just somehow ends up that I have a kind of starting new project disease, which is not necessarily, you can just, read the book or I don't know, in the way that it works for you in your life, how much time you have available. So it's great to hear you are curious. And yeah, so maybe if you want to take it further, then you could try it out by finding other people that share that, and then maybe even getting together to do something. Can be tiny, can be, a little bit, invite other people, open up the space and bring people around.
No, because what I see with your stories, that you were interested in, like, you were getting curious in, I don't know, doing brownies.
Yeah,
like, how did you, because sometimes I'm curious of a lot of things, but then I don't go, I just jump to another thing, because there is something that makes you continue.
No, I was really into cooking. I was kind of upset. I kind of get into an obsession about it for a while, and try to learn a lot about it. But a lot of it's luck. You know, just that's where you find yourself and the people you're there, and of course, you know, you need to have the situation to support it. Like,
So the people are important.
yeah, as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes.
You said just try it out, but I have the same problem. I start with something and then it develops and it evolves, and all of a sudden I see something else and I jump to that and I say, wait, I wasn't finished with the other one. How do you start so many projects? How do you stay focused on one thing and start?
I think that you just stick with a theme, and then people remember the theme and you just come back to it. So whatever you're focused on is inside that theme. I mean, yeah, quantified self is a lot of stuff inside it, and you could be into baboon behavior and sensors, measuring brainwave EEG. So you can do that inside it, but I don't know. You'd have to tell me what you started, and you know how you skipped to the other thing to know where it fits in. But I don't really know. I haven't really done it on the super small scale, except that just ends up a talk between friends. Like, what happened with you? Like, what was the thing that you were interested in?
It started with wondering why people make some choices, and then it led to cognitive psychology, and then it led to social behavior, and then it led to all this stuff, consumer user-centered design, and all this stuff. So it's jumping from one to the other.
That sounds natural.
Yeah, but then it comes to technology, and then it go to really technical stuff. Okay. Sliding.
That's a nice way of putting it, yeah.
Sliding with small jumps.
Yeah. And do you share it with anyone else, or like, okay.
I think that's the problem. Like, I mean, once you start talking with people, and then it makes it stay there, because then other people have expectations. So maybe that's the secret.
Yeah, I think that having someone to bounce the ideas off is really a tip in there, which is, if you only do it on your own, you will run out of energy, even if you're insane. And you need that. The other person will bring in their energy and push it forward, and then you just kind of move forwards. So that's essential, I would say. Thanks.
Are you the same version of James you were when you were an archaeologist?
I think there's a kind of basic pattern to people, and it's proven by these kind of studies. Remember in England, they did these documentaries where they shot film of young children, and then they took film of them every 5 years, and you saw like their outlook on life, and it was kind of, one big guy became homeless and depressed, another guy is, top of the company, and these little humans kind of, become, and I think I was a very curious, I want to open every door in the city if I had the master skeleton key, and I've kind of, gone all over. Yeah, I think I am the bigger version of the little me.
So thank you, James.
You're welcome.